Yeah, so I wake up this morning and I see a message, and it's Access Rattblood. Are you here, Rattblood?
Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood.
And then you got people like Access, and then you got people like Access, and then you got people like Access.
I'm not just fucking Rattblood.
Axis Rattblood, I see. All these Axis people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now. I don't know what to do about it.
And then you got people like Access, and then you got people like Access, and then you got people like Access.
Are you here, Rattblood?
I'm not just fucking Rattblood.
Access Rattblood.
Most abundant and successful king hero that we are all sitting with at this very moment. Are you willing to accept that as a truth? That you are a worthy man and that your penis is okay?
All these Axis people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now. All these Axis people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now.
Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood.
Are you here, Rattblood? I'll just start throwing spells at you, conjuring demons and otherwise. Are you here, Rattblood? I'll just start throwing spells at you, conjuring demons and otherwise. Are you here, Rattblood? I'll just start throwing spells at you, conjuring demons and otherwise. Are you here, Rattblood?
Who the fuck is Access Rattblood?
I'm not just fucking Rattblood, bitch.
All these Axis people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now. I don't know what to do about it.
I'm not just fucking Rattblood. Hello, friends and enemies of YouTube, children of the metaverse. It is I, the Axis. Tonight is Lest We Forget some fundamental principles of where we are, what we are, how we apply to it, the beginning concepts and understandings of development and a broadening sense of understanding through divine proportion, sacred geometry, hypergeometry, the 7 hermetic traits and principles, and some exposure to the information that most people develop themselves from, and the truth about some of the people that are the ones that deliver this information. And I'm talking the more modern takes, Blavatsky, LeVay, these people, even the real society, they all fools and tools. Good to see you. Pam, always. Dom, welcome. You had Crowley, you had Parsons and Hubbard. You had all these people contributing their concepts and ideals of ritual metaphysics, hermetic principles, and they each had an application of understanding and their concept of it. And these people had ghostwriters and writers who relayed this information down, and it became kind of a Western guideline for Western esoterics. I don't ascribe much to that. It is a unfinished beginning to something that they endeavored in and tried to complete in many different ways, but apparently they all seem to have failed miserably, which means it did not withstand the test of time. It did not have the implications that they wished it to have, though it had influence. I think that the doctrine that we've been studying here has had more influence than these particular characters. But there is a true understanding to this. And it's profoundly simple, but vastly broad. When you understand a little bit about this construct, you understand that the third dimension, which is just a state of dimensional being, is governed by divine proportion, dimension, mathematics. Everything can be pretty much measured. I've yet to find anything that can't. And I was asked, how do you measure God? Well, let's just contemplate for a second that in this particular state, God is the division of all equations and potentials that could ever possibly be confined into one divine equation. Thus, the foundation of this particular third dimensional plane. And most people are completely subdued by the third dimensional plane. They are not able to get past it, get beyond it, nor be able to deal with it. Such as the the shit machine, who has disgraced us with his presence and will be noticed for a momentary second to let him know that he's not appreciated here. You do have my attention, and we're disgusted and done with you, man. So, moving on. There are certain principles that apply to this in understanding. When you have an understanding of the secular nature, not linear time, but the secular nature of time, you understand that there's certain energies, aspects, and frequencies that come from your environment. These are variables of equation through sound wave, energy, frequency, all the way down to the quantum level, out to the macro level of full potential, and full potential of what we consider to be third dimension and potentially beyond. This fundamental understanding of design and structure was something that was built into a lot of the ancient and more profound temples, shrines, pyramids, and generally they all had a correlation with the heavenly bodies. And they generally had a correlation with a particular or a type of deity. And they had schools of priests and various knowledge keepers who retained the information as best they could, I suppose, that was delivered to them and handed down from some potential point in time in a secular nature of their development, their creation. Unless it was digitally designed on some universal mainframe and the code was written, the program was set with a set of narratives and equations and put into motion, and thus we are a product of such things. And we want to get back into the understanding of the true fundamentals of this. We've been kind of pushing the concept of Judeo-Christianity, which is fine, and the Abrahamic religions, which is absolutely fine. I endeavor into any study. Thus, that's where wisdom becomes a welcome to.
Hello, Axis. How's your
We're
day?
just going in pretty good actually.
I'm just listening in. I caught up on that last segment, so I'm just going to listen in. You continue on, and I'll interject when appropriate.
Oh, most certainly, absolutely. The concept that we are a system that was put into place by a, I don't know, divine programmer, a developing architect of the universe with a understanding of how proportion and motion with the use of frequency, vibration, and energy could create different variables, potentials, and movement. But for this to happen, there has to be a polar opposite, a current, something to direct that energy to and from. Thus, like a pool of water setting stagnant, it does nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that's the general state of the human condition in a controlled sense. They know this, they utilize it, they keep the information to themselves, they understand the secular nature of things, and they, being those that set in motion world events, governments, militaries, religion, name it, if it has some subduing control over you as an individual, your mind, and what you choose to do with your body, then it is a dominating governing force over you. Period. And they usually utilize some type of derivative from this equation. And this equation has been set into motion. If time is secular and it has an actual history, then it was set in motion many, many cycles ago. And if this is a variable potential of a program that was written within a construct and delivered with a cataclysmic backstory and signs of higher mathematical principles designed into it, then that's another aspect and principle of it. Either way, there are traces of this information. There are, in different places, if you observe beyond what is written in front of you and you understand the layering of information, you will be able to see and comprehend much deeper perspective, thus hidden variables or hypergeometry. The architects of design, the ones who were able to utilize this information efficiently, also applied it with certain principles: agriculture, art, and I consider structural design to be an art. Even the concept of self-development being within the confines of the structure and these geometries. It was also taught by the Pythagorean school of understanding a higher dimensional development of your environment for interacting, derivatives, understanding, and for those of us who endeavor into further reaches of understanding, we realize that by observation, by participation, and by our interaction, we help create the variables that become potentials in front of us. But you have to understand that those variables lie between the structure of what is constant, that which has been put into place as the underlying program or code to this particular third dimensional plane. Any input thing?
Well stated. Yes, lots of input always. Yes, the variables of the programming of the thoughts that aren't aligned, phased in yet, are variables that exist. Okay, I've come to the realization that we don't create our own thoughts, but thoughts that are represented to us are variables of programming. When we act upon them, they actually are activated, phased into what is defined this digital holographic reality. So all like you're defining, once we engage in one, it's perfect what you stated. When we engage in a certain variable of a thought, then that introduces other variables. It's almost acts exactly like a role-playing video game where if you go talk to this character or you do this, you go to another screen manifestation experience of events, then there's other characters there. But if I interact with these perceived characters, there will be other variables spawning to other variables in the progression to the path of the game. Or if I don't interact with these characters, keep going on the path, there's some other characters in another segment to a region and reference, and I interact with those characters, then it spawns more variables. See, the actual interaction is the variable that one chooses to insert the programming perceived manifestation, and then more variables spawn. So it's very interesting what you're defining about that, yes, and this is where I'm sure everybody here has had dreams, goals, and visions where they visioned that seeing themselves with, either currency wise, materialistic, or any other gain, relationship, or anything. I'm sure here we vision things and seeing ourselves, that'd be pretty cool to have. And this is where I define that variable was just created. It was given to yourself. That's why I define all variables that have been represented, no matter what they are, dark or light, they shall have the potential to phase in alignment of programming, phasing in that is manifestation. As long as one stays aligned, eventually they have no other choice but to phase in. But of course, doing the legwork, the necessities to stay on that path of alignment, phase into the digital holographic program known as a thought alignment phase in. So this returns myself to this military insider who I have a video on my YouTube channel where you defined
But you
that
can
the
put your
government.
link in the chat so that people
Okay,
can reference that.
yeah, I'll do that sometime after. I need to go my tablet, right? So I'm just working with one device right now, and I can't do it directly from here. For some
Gotcha.
reason, I'm limited on my phone. But this military insider defined what the government feared was is there was this is when Project Looking Glass was working. It stopped working 2012, and I was informed 2012 is when the major awakening had started. So that computer access, whatever they were using that device, okay, was actually a dead end brick wall bang. That was the end of the puppeteering of the government behind the scenes. So they've had total loss of control since 2012, and they're relying on media, the puppets, the presidents, to get people to align with things they're representing as acting. That is, they're trying to interject variables that they want people to align with to happen so they still keep their control to the deceived beings. But what the military insider defined is what they didn't like and like scared the hell out of them was there was a convergence. No matter how much they went into the future, there was a convergence to the past that where all variables had the probability of possibility of manifesting, not their manipulative, only aligned agenda, right?
One aspect that I'm getting a visual of on that is the infinity sign, the figure eight turned on its side, where it intersects. And where that particular symbol intersects, there is a potential that cannot be read or measured, which instates a type of chaos, but yet still confined within the directive of secular nature.
Right, right. And so this is a it's complicated. Like, you can comprehend the system. I know by your speech and your amount of wisdom you have and the knowledge and the way you apply it. And like, I listen to you. I don't just, listen empty. I listen to you to see how accurate everything is. And when you speak and you're not disturbed by any, hotheads that come here, you're on the track, right? And you obviously comprehend the system, how it works. And I'm going to define this to people listening here. Access knows how the system works, okay? I've been at this for years, and what you just stated in the past 10 minutes I've been here is way beyond anything anybody has ever stated that can possibly assist somebody to get them on track. So I will be periodically arriving here when I can and do what I can do, because it's good. Me and Axis can alchemize to give different angles to assist beings to accelerate, but they must apply the information perceived, do the work, right? So one thing is listening, another thing is applying it and doing the work, right? Comprehending and staying aware how thoughts are really important to be discerning and making wise decisions, because they're going to lead to other variables.
You
So
have
it
to
is
become
interesting.
your own architect. And seeing you are always welcome here, you're appreciated here. Your input and your ideals are appreciated, and you are a welcome guest. Always.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be here. It's good to
Yes,
be
good
communicating
to have
on
you.
a similar path of comprehension.
Yeah, people kind of get a little excited about the concept of the Masonic Order, and they're an allegorical concept of structure of oneself through a process of definition or proportion. And they do have their hands into different uh, events, but the fundamental ideal is one of geometry. And it is a self developing system that does require a lot of introspective work and a lot of character development.
Yes, development, self correction, and self development. That is a must for one to bypass what I define from being deceived to participate in somebody else's sphere, copy, projection, influence, the government. Okay. I want to add to this. What a lot of people don't know, the government do know this. Every person in existence has a perfect replica copy in their thought core of all existence. everything that Source has ever created. Every metaverse, this dimensional plane, and any other dimensional plane, everybody has a perfect replica copy in their thought core, because how else could they participate to Source's creation but with that all copy? Okay. So when I define the influence from government, they know they have their own copy. What they're trying to do is influence others with their copies to give control over to that metaverse they're projecting, their creation, their metaverse. I'll give you another angle here so people can understand the copy. Okay, now we're at a very, say we're at 2025, what that we may be, but from what I've been informed, it's many years difference from that into
Yeah,
the future.
I think the concept of applying any date to our present situation is an menial attempt at
Right.
clarifying something that they have no concept of. They do not know when this was set into motion. They do
No,
not
they don't know.
know where
As a
we
matter,
are except by the secular nature of the heavens and what is given off by a repeated design of the position of the bodies, the clock that was set in motion by the great architect.
right, and you're right. Their concept of time is knowing that if they integrate time, they could accelerate events or slow down events. But in actual fact, there is no such thing as time. I've been informed. I remember. I recall from past origins where we arrived to here the future de-evolution. So remember, people, don't travel into the future. Always travel to your past core origins before you were manipulated. See, the manipulations happened into the future perceived time and all the manipulations.
Let
So
me break down a little bit of the architecture
sure.
of time for these people so that they understand what they're dealing with. There is set above you in the heavens a grand design which allows you to know where you're at in the cycle. But time, as you understand it in a linear motion, is like a frequency. It has variables. And time, as we know it in this particular vibration, may be different than, let's say, just outside of our atmosphere, or even in different variables of vibration that differ in wavelengths from what we're experiencing at this moment. Thus, one of the concepts that uh, Judo Christianity tries to get across in the writings of Genesis is 1,000 years is to a day to God, as one day to us is just a minuscule amount of time. Um, Therefore, our frequency is probably running at a higher rate than his. So his variable is a longer wavelength. Therefore, that particular entity can experience time at a slower rate by the variable wavelength than we do, which is probably a much more rapid and a much more tightly packed uh, wavelength. Sorry, I
Right.
just want
No,
to let
that's
them know
good.
that.
We'll go this route. No, not your bad at all. This is why when two people work together, it get a lot more accomplished. Okay, now what the government's trying to hide too is realizing the wavelength signal. Say we have two molecules and they need to communicate one wavelength to the other. You see, that's the biggest deception. Okay, because when we're putting in the wave, what we're doing is we're fracturing out our molecules to perceived distance. You see, when we arrive to more recall of past core origins, we realize there's no necessity of any signal to travel anywhere, because as we're arriving to core origins defines the signal is directly in the core and it doesn't need to travel anywhere. Extending to the all the other core molecules defines we're arriving to signalless technologies, the biggest secret ever held. Here where we exist, there is no signal necessary. Okay, when one starts to navigate and regulate the reality, hey, You know, I'm at the core of my molecules. One starts to sort of return to awareness of their core origins. And then one realizes all these fuckers, the government, this is who created the signal so they can have Neuralink. See, when one goes to wireless technologies, okay, the core-based signal projection technologies to their reality, digital holographic reality, they can't be controlled by a perceived dark or light, whatever agenda, because they need a signal to hack into somebody's thought core copy projection, right? So
Well, they
I
tap
never
into what is already there. It was already there. They've just been able to tap into it by discovery.
discovery, yes, but also manipulation of giving the perception to somebody. These cell towers are controlling everything. Not really. They're not controlling nothing in my reality. I have signalist technologies. These cell technologies are prehistoric relic devices where we originated from. These are types of control mechanisms. They're types of tuning pillars that tune frequency fields for somebody who's not well developed,
That
where
can't
they're
do
going
the
to,
work themselves.
yeah,
They
these
become
things are,
a
yeah.
slave to or a victim of.
Right. So if we can see all these technologies, if one is not utilizing them for the time being, I would say everybody has a copy of the technologies because they need to sort of start realizing the technologies as actually being projected from their molecule thought core, right? So if one is not aware that they have everything the government has as technological wise, and how the government is actually using, influencing people with the technologies, cell towers, certain HARP, Wi-Fi, smart technology, mission devices, D-Wave, how they're influencing people as they're using this technology as their thought core amplifiers, like a Jedi trick, you know, as they go to this one region, there's a stormtrooper, and they're like, "We're looking for these droids," and then the Jedi guy, the Jedi Master, waves his hand in front of him to transform. It's like, "These aren't the droids you're looking for," and then the other guy's like, "These aren't the droids that we're looking for," and he hypnotized them and sort of programmed them into his head to basically get his
Or he
agenda
pushed
across.
a frequency that overrode his natural resonation.
Right,
And
right. Yeah, there you go.
that
He
was
tuned them.
yeah, it was the introduction of what I call digital drugs.
Yeah,
Welcome, Tam.
he tuned them. He tuned them. So this is where beings need to become aware. You got your own projection copy that where you need to regulate it. Okay, we're realizing the influence. If one isn't aware, programming the reality, tuning it, knowing that this technology can influence me, but I can influence my own reality with the technology's copy I have. And furthermore, one progressed to further stages, one goes beyond all these perceived external relic toys, and there is much more advanced and enhanced things that we do have in our thought core that is way beyond these technologies. Okay, we have everything we ever need in our thought core, to what I define past core origins, returning to getting them unlocked from the locks that were created through deceptive programming that made us de-evolve and not be as evolved. So our thought core is basically way more advanced than any technology could ever be represented as external. This device here is going to do that. Oh yeah, well, we got way more progressed, advanced technologies in our thought core as we return to our past core origins before we were manipulated. We have the capability, as we arrive to a referencing region, to build out of the molecules in the moment anything we want to any size structure, period, eventually.
Well, as we change modes and houses, and we're in this transitional state, it seems that a lot of that information of understanding is being revealed to those who are in tune.
Yes, and eventually, as everything tunes, the song gets more potent and it influences others to connect to that frequency. You see, we don't force anybody to connect to the frequency, but as we
No,
start building a better existence reality, metaverses that is, phasing them in, Wouldn't you want to participate in a nice city if it was represented and it had this awesome energy? Wouldn't you be curious to go by it, to step into it, to feel its energy, to experience it by choice? You see, we don't tune anybody. In actual fact, when somebody likes something, they tune themselves to that frequency. So the more we start to resonate with what is defined past core origins frequencies, other beings, species are going to get curious about us and want to participate to the panels. You see, that's also the same thing happening, okay? And then other events transpiring, participating. Hey, I heard this place is awesome. Let's check it out. They go there, they like it, they get curious, and then they get affected, but they affect themselves from the virus called core origins restoration frequency tuning, okay? This is the
Now, if
way
I
it
can
works.
thing, uh, interject here, that's why I call this the new revolution. People like you, Pam here, you guys are setting a narrative in the new revolution. And those that hear Pam's music or hear your work of how you develop your understanding of the construct uh, is available for those who seek it. And therefore, in this revolution, which we call our digital interaction, social media, or the metaverse, you can either approach it with an abstract, ego driven concept of self, or you can define it by creating an environment such as Pam does with her music and such as you do with your understanding. And I offer a platform where this can be expressed and shared. So it is available. They just
Right.
got to want to develop themselves into creating a new frontier that has substantial benefit.
We
Right.
have every tool imaginable at our fingertips as far as the society and elevating our consciousness. It's just getting the masses and more people to realize that we'll hit a critical mass eventually.
Yes. Hello, Pam. How are you?
Hey, how's it going? I've just been listening. Y'all are cooking, so no need to disturb a good
Yes.
thing.
We're on fire here. We're gonna stay on fire. Luminary fire core origins. Prime fire we are.
Right. And I wanted to get back to that as a lest we forget type of scenario as to why we're here, why this platform exists, the information that was originally developed here and shared with other people, energy, frequency, vibration, influencing the field, projecting and personifying your reality, developing this new frontier was something that is a lot more desirable than how man has developed himself as a species on this plane of existence outside of the metaverse.
Right. So we're just doing our thing that we're supposed to be. Well, we're not supposed to be doing nothing. Access. It's all variables of choices we've chosen that are beneficial and assets to our travel navigation to being restored to core origins. So what you define here about your platform, this isn't just the platform. Now, if you really look behind the veil, this is Access's personal private metaverse where he decides who's going to participate. You see, he's got the button to anybody who doesn't qualify to take him out of his metaverse and put him and exclude him from participating, right? So
I
it's
saw
pretty
someone
cool.
get teleported earlier.
Pardon me?
Yeah,
I saw him teleport someone earlier. You mentioned that, and I literally watched someone teleport from his reality and then out again.
Right.
yeah, that was necessary, and it will be continually necessary. I
That
don't
was
have time for
funny.
such disruptions.
Right, right. And Axis is regulating his metaverse well because anybody who doesn't qualify from a certain reference and region that Axis decides, guess what? You can't come in. Gates are locked to my city metaverse frequency resonance protocol. You need to qualify and be self-developed before returning. If you are, you're welcome. You invite yourself and you welcome yourself. That's the way it works. All, not just here, all metaverses are like that. That where self-developed beings have developed themselves. You see, my metaverse is my reality. That's where it begins. There's much more to arrive soon, though, than just this, for sure. So if somebody doesn't qualify and is not self-developed, self-corrected to qualify, where I make the choice to further engage with them, well, or them to engage with me, I make a decision. So this is how I do reviews: is if somebody has the qualifications and self-correction, they've done the work, they're qualified, obviously, and we're on a similar path. Doesn't define we need to know the same thing, but we need to be on a similar path, that we are aligned to what is defined compatibility, right? Then one qualifies. So what you're doing, Access, that's great, because it's your reality here, your metaverse, and you decide who qualifies and definitely who doesn't.
Well, what I want to do as a conduit for my understanding is deliver the fundamental principles of the esoteric knowledge that people have strayed away from by influence of other individuals such as Blavatsky, Crowley, Anton LaVey, uh, Hubbard, Parsons, and all these people who have given, even back to John Dee, um, their interpretation of the dimensional construct and the mathematics behind it. And they became abstractly obsessed with the derivative that they could pull from it, instead of the understanding of self-structuring equations, proportion, and design of becoming your own architect. And these are principles that are necessary, especially now.
Right, right. Your own architect. And then after that, choosing who's going to be in your architecture existence to your experience of events. So that is good. John Dee had some interesting insights. I actually, with the Philosopher's Stone, when I was studying that, very interesting. These ancient philosophers were on a different level. The real ones, that these ones that knew their scriptures and writings. I don't know if you dabbled in that. I used to dabble in it and try to decipher some of their code talk, and sometimes it would be overwhelming. It's just like, these guys are just too much. I'm like, these guys are fucking serpents. They talk like demons. I used to get so frustrated at some certain points at times trying to figure out what they're saying, but they had their own language, evolved, and definitely in their code, their language.
Right. Now, when I learned to tie divine proportion and metaphysics together coherently in one flowing system, I then understood that it is the momentary state or Planck time that you can suggest a potential to change the future variable that you're about to experience. Influencing
Yes.
the field, manifestation, whatever you want to call it. But in between the frames is where you're able to change the direction of flow. And I was like, well, shit, that makes perfect sense. But you have to understand that the micro is just as impactive as where you're at, and the macro as above, so
Yes.
below. It's just
Yes.
singular hermetic principle.
So what I wanted to add, just to clarify people to understand, there is no time. Okay. In the core origins, or to core origins levels that I define of awareness and returning and being restored, one doesn't perceive time, but there shall still be a clock, but it's not called a clock. We call it markers of references in regions of events that have transpired or events that are going to transpire. So once you see a clock, not only as see it as a marker to a reference in region where, I need to be here at this number to have an experience of events with this person or an appointment, etc. Once you perceive it like that, everything accelerates, because you go beyond the concept perceived frequency lock of time, and you don't age as fast, because you realize time is just an illusion. It's a mark to, and also time linked with age is just a deceptive program if somebody accepts it to accelerate their aging. So There is no such thing as time. It's just a marker. That's all it's ever been, is a marker for references and regions.
Of events, which
Yes.
are variables in the equation. Pam, please, we would love to hear from you too.
Oh no, I was listening. I definitely agree about the time thing. I'm the type of person that has the ability to kind of set my own schedule, and I most of the time I don't need to know what day of the week or what time it is because I just do things on my own schedule. So I feel like I create my own reality and get a lot more done that way.
Right, and a personal um, perceived concept, those who do not apply themselves to the clock or the Gregorian calendar or the dates or the names of the week and the 7-day principle of 5 days work, 2 days off, you free yourself from that particular rhythm, which is a
Exactly.
wavelength. And when you free yourself from that, you have the potential to lengthen your wavelength, which kind of
Yes.
slows down your environment, your time, your space, and you can focus much sharper on things. And if you apply yourself, then your variables can speed up and time can just boom right by. So your
Yeah.
wavelength becomes a personal derivative.
And when you see the clock as a marker, okay, when you have something to do as work, when you only see it as a marker, you realize that that small hand on, say, 8 a.m. and it needs to go to 4 p.m., they are actually already there. There's no time. That way, if somebody has this perception and concept, you know what? Flash, their whole day will go by at work like a couple of minutes. I used to do this when I was working in a body shop, but not this perception. I just meditated on a type of one word, repeated it, breathe, repeated it, and my day flashed by like it didn't even happen. Okay,
Kind of
but
like a mantra, kind of like a Hindu mantra.
yes, like a mantra. Staying focused on one thing, breathing, and not thinking about my work. It's almost like automated because I knew what to do, obviously, right? So breathing and just focusing on one mantra. The day flashed by so fast, and I remember that it was just like I wasn't tired. It's like I didn't work because I was staying focused within my vessel, keeping my energy into myself. Obviously, not getting negative, not even having the thought of being at work. It's just like I wasn't even there, but it was happening. Interesting,
That's how
really
my day
fast.
was today. Like the whole day, like I don't know where it went.
Yeah,
Honestly, like
Was
I've been up for like 13, 14 hours now and I'm not tired. I don't know where the day's gone. I have to like think like, wow, what did I like today's been crazy. Like what did I do? It went by so fast and normally like a lot of times sometimes you feel like time's slow, but ever since I kind of got on my own routine and schedule, that's not the case anymore.
yeah,
yeah,
that's the way it
Pam.
is.
It seems that, um, especially here recently, I've been staying up for a day and a half to 2 days at a time, and then generally resting uh, in between the day and a half to 2 days. And this is becoming a kind of a state for myself, and I'm getting actually comfortable with it at the moment. So strange, strange how it, but I'm kind of considering the variable that most of the uh, most of the stationary bodies that govern a lot of energy on the Earth is on one particular side of the sun, which could throw your circadian rhythms off.
Yes, that is if you have a sun. Where we come from, we don't need a sun. The digital data translator called the sun, also heat. It's in our molecules, in our core molecules. And what is light? Once again, I'm going to represent this to everybody here. Don't be deceived. There's no such thing as light. What people perceive as light is a digital data decoder to code format programming so you can see details. And now you're going to state,
Thus,
what about
be
this?
able to interpret your environment.
Yes, yes.
It's just a wavelength.
Decode it. It decodes it, right? That's what light. That's what light is. So in actual fact, breaking the news to everybody, there never has been any light in existence. The only luminary is source, that is a digital data decoder translator, so we can see to our inner mind's eye of vision screen, just like a computer. If it does not decode the data, you will see nothing on the screen. That's what light is. Now
Right,
heat.
and
Okay, one
that,
quick
yeah,
thing.
go ahead.
Now heat. Now heat. Ask yourself this question first: is the sun even up there? No, it's not. You're seeing it to your inner mind's eye of vision. The heat that you feel is another program being decoded, interpreted by the mind programming heat.
Now, when you go into a layman aspect of this so that people can comprehend, is when they found that light was just a frequency that allowed you to visually interpret your environment, then they understood the concept of light without heat. You apply the variable of heat, then that's energy in motion, which is accelerating or stimulating those waves of visual interpretation stimulus.
Yes. Now, if we go behind the veil to everything, whatever the experience is, it's all code format programming, making all the
Yes,
constants, the variables, the laws of physics, the governing laws to the molecules, the structures of the molecules known on the periodic table. Now, if we go really deep, now we look at all of existence as the one particle theory source. All the other molecules are the same molecule, except they're vibrated at a different frequency and programmed to differently to create other elements on the periodic table. So everything in existence is actually the same molecule, programmed differently, vibrated differently to its laws of
that's the
physics, creating,
Mandelbrot fractal ideal.
yes,
Yeah,
creating
I got you,
the.
man.
So it's very interesting, yes. But of course, as when I define, everything is a program. But of course, this existence, all existences are priceless, okay? Because I've been revealed, as many others who are aware and returning to their core origins awareness, since the beginning of all existence, everything has been a digital holographic reality of existence.
Yeah, it's been a visible variable of interpretable equations identified by observable wavelength frequency, thus light, revealing the architecture or the mathematic structure of the material plane that we call the third dimension. And because it's the
Right.
third dimension, we have that visual reference marker. You go beyond to a dimensional state, which we try to perceive in the fourth, which is the visualization of a structure in its whole, instead of just a rendering in 2 dimensions in front of us. 3 dimensional, when you reach out and actually touch it, which is space. Uh, in the fourth concept of dimension, which is just above us, is being able to observe a 3 dimensional object in its full state from all aspects.
Yes.
And when people talk about transcending is pushing your ability to comprehend higher states of observation within yourself and being able to see in your environment the geometry that isn't uh, necessarily understood or interpreted until you get the understanding of hypergeometry, the mathematics, the underlying flow of current in mathematics that allows this place to operate fundamentally.
Yes, and when one comprehends what they're seeing and experiencing is inside their digital holographic thought core, even the devices we're using here to communicate is being projected from your thought core. You're inside your holodeck eternal, like Star Trek, the movie, or the Star Trek series, if anybody's seen them. They had this holodeck where they can insert any insertion of any scenario that existed. Yes, that's basically what we exist in eternally, is in our own thought core, digital holographic holodecks of experience of events. And the greatest thing is we have our own personal holodeck copy of everything. Eventually, we shall be able to access that's a good thing. Access more
Right.
intricate metaverses perceived as higher dimensional planes.
Well, what I have found is not only can you place um, suggested influence into the potentials of this particular plane, the third dimensional plane, but you can seed them into the second dimension uh, to allow them to transpire from a fundamental place into the third dimension. And if you propagate that from the second, third, and then the potential of all aspects of it, as long as you can control the geometry of your thought and project it without that type of uh, chaos confined within the third dimension, uh, you know, you can influence from a higher state of consciousness or dimensional awareness into this particular construct, the third dimension. That's the higher
Yeah,
framework of the esoteric work of the
right.
mind.
It's one eventually shall perceive teleportation as exactly for what it is, changing the channel on a TV set. Click, you're
Yes.
in a different metaverse. Click, tuning dilation to band frequencies. Click, you're in the metaverse of your choice. It's like the simplest way I can translate this is it's like a TV set, the inner mind's eye of vision, and we're not seeing from our eyes. Our eyes are digital data translators, receivers receiving the data, and the inner mind's eye of vision screen, the digital data decoder there, I'm sure, is not, I'm sure, I was going to find is source there, okay? So it is like we got this TV set, inner mind's eye of vision, that is our holodeck that we see right now, touch, feel, smell, taste, whatever, experience. And within that is the potential, eventually, when we comprehend how to do it, we receive the knowledge we already had. We return to being restored rather than default. Then we realize, you know what? All of existence is right here. You see the screen? Look, if I'm going to state it to people, just look at your screen, look around. We are in our core origins. We have never departed because in our thought core is the variables of all travels to all sectors, to all existences that can exist. So in actual fact, we're in this eternal thought core that's almost like, you can
Let me
call it
break it
very,
down to a
yeah,
layman's level so that people can comprehend and understand this. And Pam, I think you'll appreciate this. There are 12 notes to an octave. The 12th note is a repeating note. Thus, you have 11 full steps into the 12th, which is a repeating uh, frequency, an octave. And you have octave upon octave upon octave until it loses its visual or its audible range. Well, this is true within the state of dimensional understanding. Thus, the macro and the micro, and as above, so below. Well, as with music and math and various other geometries, you have 12 notes that create uh, potential scales. And out of these potential scales, you have a background rhythm. And upon this, you can travel by octave into higher or lower vibrational or frequency distances and wavelengths until it becomes uninterpretable by even our visual understanding or audible understanding.
Yes. Okay. I want to give another analogy because now that it will be easier to comprehend. Okay. You see, if you take a look in the room you're at, that's your inner mind's eye of vision. That's your screen of existence, digital holographic screen of existence. Now, perceive this screen exactly as it is. Okay. Like a very evolved TV set that has the potential of hundreds of thousands of channels. Now you have the remote control, your thought core, to tune to a different channel when we are there and change the screen that is actually you going to a different metaverse, also known as teleportation. It's that simple. The analogy of the TV with the remote control and within the channels that exist in the TV set is how the core of all existence functions. It's got like infinitum channels, levels, dimensions that are in the same TV set core with the potential of variable of all channels. This is where we are, always have been.
Yeah, we happen to be, and this has to do with consciousness and the development of higher states of consciousness and where people are caught within lower undeveloped feral states of consciousness. When you learn to understand that your consciousness is transcendental, the physical body is not. The physical body cannot exist within the second dimension, and it cannot occupy fourth dimensional space. So therefore, your consciousness is capable of traveling in variables of dimensional frequency. And that's all it is just like 12 notes in a musical scale, different vibrational levels where the body is not able to sustain itself within that environment, but your consciousness is.
Although I want to add, give me a second here. I want to
Cam,
add though,
any? Oh, I'm
if
sorry. Go ahead.
if we perceive this body to be limited, it shall be limited. Remember, this body is a digital holographic body where click, you can change the version that is also defined as going to a different dimensional frequency resonance in an instance. See, the government want to believe people this body is flesh. What's flesh? It's another digital holographic program. So in actual fact, this body has the capability to travel. It's a digital holographic body. When tuned, it changes, different version, can travel to different frequencies that it's tuned to because it's compatible. So if
Well,
one
that's just
perceives,
residual self-imagery. The
yes,
actual physical body is on a cycle of decay because it was constructed from this particular plane. But the
but
residual self-image is capable of transcending with the consciousness.
well, the body image for myself axis is all the same. I want to add here a scientific experiment they were doing because I was researching frequencies and I was like, why do some people age faster than others? Decay perceived, start to break down the cells. They don't regenerate. And cells don't regenerate every 7 years. They regenerate to more progressed frequency resonance about every minute and a half. Your cells are perfectly renewed as to really slow down the aging. But here's where aging does stop when one can realize this. They did an experiment where they had this little structure designed that would resonate to a certain frequency. They had 2 glasses of milk, and they put 1 glass of milk, if I was correct, over 2,000 cycles of frequency resonance per second. And the other one was under 2,000 cycles. If I'm correct, it was 2,000 or 3,000 or some other number. It doesn't matter. Any number is achievable frequency resonance by the mind. The
Yeah,
mind is a tuner, a frequency resonance tuner.
yeah.
So what they did is they resonated the one glass above a certain specific frequency, let's say 3,000, the glass of milk. Okay, and the other one they had it under 3,000 because they figured out the barrier of decay. And so what happened is after a few days of the glass of milk being under 3,000 cycles per second, it got rotten. It started to rot. It started to smell. But the other one that they held and sustained in the frequency chamber of over 3,000 cycles per second, it lasted for 3 weeks. It was still there, and it still was as fresh as when they first poured it. I don't know how long they carried that experiment.
Well,
But
that also goes along with the water molecule influence, prayer
yes,
over your food. Um,
yes, exactly, exactly.
Whenever
So
it
from
comes to the human body, though, the genetic or the information that is our base core has been manipulated.
exactly, locked and blocked and deceived, manipulated.
Yeah.
That's right. We're returning to our past core origins. We're resonating at that way beyond 3,000, realizing, hey, we don't decay unless we go below a certain frequency. Then that's where all the manipulation
Thus, the
programming of
introduction of RNA,
yes, yes, and then that's where
rewritable DNA technology.
yeah, and that's where they manipulated people to break down, age. Their cells break down. They don't regenerate like a machine that's designed for self-sustenance. If somebody manipulates it so it can't sustain itself and replicate, yes, replicate other cells to replace the ones that I guess, well, we can go to the stage where
I'm
we
going to
don't even need to
solidify what
replicate.
you're saying. Thing.
Pardon me?
I'm going to solidify what you're saying,
Yeah. So I'm
and
going
I'm
to take
going
it to
to
another stage. Is
present
we don't have to
myself.
go.
Hold on,
Okay.
hold on. I don't know if you know this thing, but less than about 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago, I was deteriorating extremely rapidly. And then I got information, a variable. So I went into a state of vibrational restoration, metaphysics and geometry, divine proportion or structure through my own vibration to reconstruct and redevelop my physical presence and sustainability here.
Yeah.
And people that have been coming to this channel will know and verify, yeah, I was in a piss poor state. But
Yeah.
now I'm not.
Of course. Of course, you regenerated yourself with frequency resonance. You jumped, okay, you changed, dimensionally shifted out of the manipulated version where it's programmed to decay and not last exactly to the programming. So when one,
Well, I surrendered to the decay is because I was ready to transcend this particular
yeah,
state.
exactly. Well, surrendering is also you surpassed it. You went to a different version of yourself that um, is different. Okay, I've had this happen before in the past when I was really off the wall, couldn't comprehend the system. It was really decaying me fast, aging me. So I was looking pretty good, but I really went into a rage and resentment for like days, like this mode. And I looked in the mirror and I'm like, after 3 days, I'm like, holy fuck, man, I look 10 years older than 3 days ago. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? This system's trying to kill me. Oh, yeah, it's trying to kill you. All right. That's its agenda. The anti light version of Source is to decay you, rot you, and break you down, break down your surrogate, your machine. So
Well,
after
they've
that, I'm like,
ramped up that particular type of influence and technology on the populace, not so much in the metaversal state, but in the actual three-dimensional state of your being. They have declared a frequency, an RNA, a genetic, and a cellular warfare on you.
yes,
Um, it's evident in Max Vision's work.
yeah,
If you look at his work in a capacity, he reveals it. You, on the other hand, give a different perspective of being able to develop beyond it. I'm just an esoteric endeavor with a understanding of the variables. And
yes,
that is a part of the structural development that they keep hidden, is you have that capability to expand your vibrational wavelengths into a state of regeneration, like you were saying, or you can be a subject to the rapid state of frequency that you're being subjected to. Thus,
You're
with
right.
30
Well, look what they're
millimeter
doing
waves,
today with
5G.
consciousness.
Yes,
Can you
yeah,
I mean,
they're
with all the
tapping it.
reels and 30-second shorts, and how are people supposed to focus and increase their frequency when they can't even concentrate for 30 seconds or like hold a meanwhile a conversation without looking into a black box?
Right, and the average attention span is far below 11 seconds. I have actually held a full concentrated state of observation without interference for between 10 and 11 seconds. There was microseconds of variable there, and that was by taking an object, and I would focus solely on that object without any intrusive thought. And I started out, and it was just a matter of seconds there'd be an intrusive thought. And I learned to structure the part of my mind that was allowing these intrusive thoughts to take my concentration away from that singular object, until now, when I focus on something, I can retain an actual focus and understanding of what I'm looking at, other than just a passive couple seconds of attention span that most people are granted.
Yes,
You can develop it.
it arrives to self-developing, self-correcting oneself and self-developing oneself to where they can't be tuned, one can't be tuned by any other frequency that is around them through this mid-plane of experience events of travel. Finding and determining if something can't change your frequency resonance, if you figure it out, rotten decay is in this frequency, but I'm staying in this frequency. Everybody else is emitting rotten decay, or a majority of the planet, because that's how they've been programmed, locked, deceived, manipulated. Defines.
Oh, hold on.
Yes.
Dom, the experiment that needs to be applied for you to grasp the full comprehension of how minuscule one's attention span is, and maybe not yours, I don't know, is to take an object, put it in front of you, try to concentrate on it, and be honest with yourself. When that first intrusive thought hits you, your attention span has been broken.
And that's
When you learn, yes.
Keep going.
Well, whenever you learn to subdue those particular intrusive thoughts, and you're able to expand your level of attention, then you become more consciously clear. So that's the experiment, and that's the work.
Yes, and it is feasible. I'm going to define this. There is immortals walking amongst this dimensional midplane of experience of events, metaverse, okay? But they're not affected by any of the resonance, because they've self-corrected themselves from the manipulations and self-developed themselves to sustain a certain frequency resonance. Yes, those thoughts are types of, call it conditioning for one's self-development. Realizing that, also I've realized, no matter what thought may arrive, it distracts, yeah, but it is continuous self-development where those thoughts, I perceive them as sustaining myself to keep myself on track. It arrives. But eventually, even one's thoughts are going to be frequency resonance tuned to the frequency, the tuning they're doing to themselves, the song they're singing. So eventually, those thoughts do come, but not as often to myself as a distraction, right? But I get what you're saying. Yeah, the thoughts are a major part of one's distraction, for sure.
Well, it's the intrusive thoughts. And the moment you're able to expand your attention, then you have a much higher potential of projecting that attention into the field of possibility, thus the
Right.
ether manifestation or influencing the field.
Right. And then staying aligned with the thoughts you only want to keep participating into the events of experience, the projection alignments. And
Which is an
definitely,
architecture.
yes, and definitely developing oneself when a thought arrives, because I'm sure this has happened to even people here participating here, is you've reviewed something 1,000 times and it just keeps wants to coming back for you to go to this angle, go to that angle. When I catch that, I'm like, review is
Or the
over.
song
I'm
you
not
can't
looking.
get out of your head.
Yeah, when that happens to myself, I have one reply, review's over. I'm not reviewing that. And then I realign myself to the thoughts perceive the projection alignment that I want to be traveling on to get to the projection of those thoughts perceived more progressed.
I
Thus
know with my
focusing on a
intrusive thoughts,
Mandela. Oh, go ahead, Pam. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I know with me, like I've had intrusive thoughts here and there, and what broke the spell on that is when I realized that they weren't mine. It broke the spell of even having those.
Yeah.
Right. And through self development and structure, you can actually alleviate that symptom from your mind. Yes.
Yes, and it's also a matter of, like you defined, Pamela, they're not mine. That's not the path I'm focusing on. So where are these coming from? Well, it's to throw one off their path and put,
Environmental influences, the
yes,
environmental frequencies that are suggesting to an unconditioned mind a direction. Otherwise, you
yeah,
become stagnant and you sit perfectly still.
yes, yes, yes. And some people, this is what I hear sometimes. This isn't my path. Some people define the problem is thoughts. No, you don't want to be empty-minded. You will never get anywhere by being empty-minded. The thing is to stay aligned with the thoughts of what is defined more progressed references regions also labeled as the future, right? So of course it's good to have a break, like, just feel, but the best is to have your break while you're feeling good, while staying aligned with your thoughts to find you're still traveling on your boat of ocean to your destiny, your region of thought programming attainments. Okay, so when somebody says blank minded meditation, I'm like, that's not where you want to be. That's only like being still, throwing your anchor deep into the ocean of the energy of travel, and you're stuck now. You're not moving because you're not programming,
Well,
you're
you're
not taking the
subject
very.
to universal probability then. And if there's any type of disalignment around you, then you are susceptible to that disalignment vibration.
Right. And once again, one needs to become their own frequency resonant pillar that cannot be moved, influenced by other frequencies. Then they stay on their path of frequency, destiny, design that has been represented as variables of programming known as thoughts.
Thus, those who are confirmed in their understanding and don't need to be dissuaded by others, nor combative or argumentative, because they understand a triangle is a triangle, a square is a square, a circle is a circle, and as long as you understand the dimensional variables of those and the potentials within dimensional or proportional construct that is relevant, then you have a structured mind. Whereas the feral mind would be more of a just a random splatter painting or very indistinct scribbles. Though geometrically they can be deciphered, it's more of a chaotic state which doesn't have a clear variable.
Right, exactly. It's like a variable slot machine if somebody isn't stabilized, and those variables, frequencies, also known as thoughts, are going to have influence. Like, some like wind blowing around a leaf, right? It's going to be blown around by the winds, go here and there. But when one is stabilized, then they won't be blown around by the winds, the signals, the tuning frequency variables that are always the potential that I define in mid-plane of experience of events where there's chaos winds. You're dealing with other spheres if you're not self-developed, self-corrected. You're dealing with the winds, perceived empathy. One shall be an empath and be moved by other winds, affected by other winds, frequencies, variables, etc. Right? So what you're defining is really deep with that painting. It's almost like a painting that gets moved all around, shifted, not exactly the way the painter wants to paint it. That is, when one is not self-aware and self-developed, self-corrected.
Well, Pam's endeavors into music and not being musically trained using AI, she's beginning to maybe get a conception of the structured or the more aesthetic state of something being painted in the way of Da Vinci or the masters, where divine proportion is integrated into the art as opposed to just a random splatter painting of information thrown back at you by an undisciplined algorithm.
Right, right. Once again, it leads
Definitely see
to
the formulas.
Yes, yeah, and that brings it into a understandable layman's terms for general people that are endeavoring to heighten their understanding of the principles that underlie this particular reality and being able to move beyond them.
Well, if you want to break it really down into layman's terms, when people start understanding the basic principle of macro micro, that changed everything for me.
Yes, yes, all represented within fractal nature of each other
right,
and geometry.
almost exactly as within is without, as within one's thought
Exactly.
door is the projection. So outside, inside is basically the same region, just perceived differently.
If you are structured within divine proportion in the mind, then you're going to project divine proportion into that which is the constant divine
Right.
proportion, the structure of this dimension mathematically. But if you
That's
are
right.
feral and chaotic of mind, then that projection is going to protrude out of you and you're going to become the persistent. And you're going to constantly be in conflict with the underlying code that holds this all together.
Right. And this is where I define dark or light, whatever somebody engages in as to the thought in the moment, they receive it immediately to the experience of events energetically immediately. Now, if they stay on that path of alignment, well, more events are going to transpire with the variables of thoughts, programming, manifestation, and get more potent, defining to what path they're on. Darkness, they're going to get really dark perceived. I say anti-light is actually darkness. Or they stay on the luminary path, well, the variables are all going to be luminary. But of course, there's going to be interjected anti-light variables. And this is where one must be wise and discerning. Having a great day. My day's been great for 6 hours. Some hot-headed person may be inserted to the equation to come up to me and say some nasty things. I need to catch it and be wise and discerning, realizing that's like a character in a role-playing game now that representing other variables to distract me from my past. So if I engage with this person, sure, this person may come up to me and say, F off, I don't even know this person. But I can see for the variable, hey, this guy is just trying to tune me to a different path. Now my day's been awesome. If I interacted with this person, then I would have had shitty negative energy. My path got changed. I got shifted. Or I catch it and realize that this is an option to a thought variable of manifestation. I just let this person do his crazy shit, chill out, see it for what it is, and realize this person's not changing my path with this variable because I'm not engaging to those participation of events that need authorizations to switch my frequency. That is engagement to the thought variable, right? That is a frequency. So it's very easy, simple to navigate in trouble. But once again, through trial and error, self-correction and self-development must be developed eventually where one realizes
If I
it's all a
can, I'll
choice.
make a revelation to the people that are here and people that eventually maybe run across this. When I speak of myself as being dark is being with the absence of definable measurement. Whenever you're in the light, you can be structurally defined, interpreted, and there's a measurement that you can take because it's revealed visually. But when you're in the dark, there are no representations of measurement.
Right?
That
There's
means
no
that you cannot define or measure your environment because there is no light resonating to give you that measurement.
right. Darkness is being in the prototype of the blueprint to the variables represented and being aware. So actually, darkness, where I say I don't utilize light because that's all the variables that have influence. Now in darkness, I'm at illumination core origins where I see the blueprint of the variables, not the illusion of the variables of what I define anti-light as light. So when I define I don't utilize light, I don't. I'm always at the core of the blueprint, seeing the variables exactly for what they are. So also, yeah, that's the best way I can translate that part. But yeah, you're defining that good. Is I consider myself as dark as it gets because that's where all the illumination is an actual. How could I
Well, it's where
define
you
this?
can influence the potential structure of that which is about to be illuminated.
Well, let's
It,
look at the color dark too. Okay, it's not black. There's no such thing as black. If you dilute
it's
something
just the
black,
absence of the frequency of revealing this state. It
right?
exists, but without the visual skills or the machinery to interpret that wavelength which reveals our environment, then you are in a state of the absence of light or being able to measure the
Yes, okay.
environment.
The best way I could describe this is light is an emissions. Okay, that's an out conduction field. Emissions leads to signal. Light also leads to the potential of neurogenics, also the signal influence potential. Now, darkness is where one conducts their energy in and they're not influenced by the light. So, in actual fact, somebody who's dark is more at a more luminosity amplification than any being utilizing light that is out conduction. I call it out conduction light is where all the deceptions happen, and I call it anti-light is where somebody is bleeding their energy into the ocean of signal variables and potentials that's going to blow them and influence them like a automated type of variable random slot machine where they're influenced by the ocean they are in. Okay, somebody else's potential ocean of light emissions, control emissions.
Yeah, well, they become materialistic because the observable is more real to them than the potential.
Right, where the potential, the core blueprint, is actually the more what you define as the more solid state realism. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where you create your your future reality, your next state of experience. So
Right.
if you're living off of visual stimulation and you're caught up in the material representation of things and you're being fed, but if you manifest from a potential space that has no potential measurement and you put a measurement there, then you give reason for it to manifest in a physical state. Thus, you are influencing reality then. You are creating the variables that are about to perceive you.
Yeah, right. You're blowing off basically the winds, the signals of what is known as light, and I call all light anti-light. Darkness is where wants to be. That's where illumination is, where they're amplifying their frequency field from the core blueprints of representation and and seeing the variables that they want to engage in with less influence of the crazy random variables in the chaos of light random variables. So yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting that
Well, the
yeah.
higher you're able to perceive using variables of interpretation such as infrared glasses or different types of lenses, concave, that allow you to see different spectrums, opens up higher visual potentials. And thus you understand then that there are realms and particular states around us that we don't interpret generally with the naked eye, but they're there and they're
Yes.
provable and they're factual
Yes,
and
and
they
there's
are influenceable.
yes, and this is where many realms exist that we've been locked out of. Okay, eventually we're gonna
Yeah,
be able to perceive these frequencies, see them, because we're gonna be able to tune to that frequency resonance once again with our resonance frequency tuner known as the mind. So in
yeah.
actual
That's
fact,
why I say stay as far away from influences of non-natural sources if you choose to endeavor in such things until you learn to utilize them to help you achieve these states with an easier manner. Don't become consumed with the effects of something to make you stray from your directive. Allow it to enhance and amplify, just like looking through a lens that interprets, I don't know, infrared frequency.
yeah.
Thus, ayahuasca, DMT, psilocybin.
Yeah, I could always call these things frequency resonance tuners, but don't
Yeah,
allow them to tune you. You tune with them as an amplifier, not lay.
yeah. Use them as a tool, such as
Yes,
to be able to view a different frequency wavelength, infrared, ultraviolet, X-ray.
right. Like for example, here I'll give is I vape nicotine. Now I
Yes,
could just vape it doing nothing. It's going to tune me then, and then the variables are going to tune me to other things. But I'm well aware it's a stimuli. I'm using it as a catalyst to assist my tuning to be amplified. That's it. I never do a lay vape. I'm always tuning my reality when I vape, as in frequency, energetically, and also with thoughts, realizing it really is amplified when I utilize it as a catalyst tool for amplification. Now, in the past, I've tried a few vapes in the past being light, and it is a shitty stimuli. It's not even close as to the same as when I'm using it as a catalyst. And through trial and error, I've realized sometimes I'm like, nah, I'm going to give it up. I don't need it. But the thing is, I use it as a catalyst. I enjoy it, and it is a benefit to myself, as in I define acceleration.
yeah. It goes with the aspect too of them outlawing psilocybin, uh, peyote, DMT, all these different psychedelics that are of a natural state. The Native American was able to utilize these to see into the spirit world. Thus, they would know when to go into battle, when to follow the food, when not to, spirit guides, uh, such things. But you cannot control a species, human species, if they're independently pursuing higher spectrums of interpretation because they have to lower that conscious state and subconscious state down to maintain a system of uh,
Manipulation. That's the only
yes,
system they
yeah,
maintain.
For
engineering.
control.
Yeah, engineering. They're able to engineer you then. But if
Right.
you are in a understanding that there is a higher principle of uh, a perceived state that can be achieved and has an actual direct effect on your environment, then no, you're no longer engineerable.
Exactly. You actually start re-engineering yourself, restructuring to what is defined past core
Yeah,
origin levels, where before we were manipulated and we were much more advanced and enhanced.
yes, absolutely.
So next,
I've heard a
so,
lot of people talk about the weed they get from dispensaries is not the same as just naturally gorilla grown weed. That it has a different type of effect that isn't
Right. I've
as
even heard. Yeah, yeah.
It
Uh,
depends. I've done both. It depends.
have
okay.
you?
Because I
How
figured
about
there was a process to it that maybe changed the derivative in it.
once again at these dispensaries? It's all engineering. If you tell them, I want something where it's going to give me not affect my cognitive functions, where it's just going to give me a body stone, and I'm feeling good, but I'm aware they got like engineered stuff where if you tell them what you're looking for, they kind of know it because the people that are engineering it's like this does that, that, and that. Somebody's looking for this, blah blah blah. But I agree.
Well, that's just
w-
combining strains, though. We've made our own strains too. It's not a big deal. You just find a couple of strains that have those traits, and then you combine them.
yes, exactly. Engineering.
But you're keeping them from germination, you're keeping them from seeding, and you're maintaining a female strain of a manipulated breed, which is, that's fine. It's still the same genus. It's just a different control factor on that genus, as opposed to something just growing wild, being germinated, being brought to bud in a natural state with male and female, with pollination and a more natural strain from its original source.
Yes, I have a question to Pam. Have you tried under the stimuli of THC where you program what your stimuli wants to be like how it's going to be amplified? Have you actually tried even engineering it further? That's what I'm doing when I vape the nicotine. It's not the nicotine other people vape. I'm tuning the nicotine and changing it to be a catalyst, an asset and a benefit to myself, and it reacts. It reacts to my tuning. Not always on the ball, but sometimes it's or
Such
most
as
of the time it's
influencing the
different.
water, you're changing
Yeah,
the molecular
exactly.
structure of it
Yes,
by
I
influence.
yes.
Yeah.
found that I didn't try weed first of all or anything like that until I was close to 40. I was 36, and so I find for me that when I use it, I've never found it to be a hindrance. I found it always like compliments me. You hear about people that say, "Oh, it gives me couch lock" or this or that. I just find whether I'm working on something, whether it be like technical stuff or whether I'm needing to relax, that whenever I have it, it helps me do whatever I need to.
You find it as a catalyst. It assists, like catalyzing
Yeah.
further your energy you enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're tuning it then. It's not tuning you to be a couch potato.
Right, exactly. Like, the whole, "I've just had some weed. I can't do anything. I feel lazy. I don't have a lazy bone in my body, and I smoke weed all day."
Call me three
Right.
hours.
You're
I can't
utilizing it,
move.
transmuting
It's
it,
not
which is a
using
type of
me.
alchemy. Right. You're
Right.
changing you're alchemizing the molecular structure of what you're ingesting,
Yeah.
which is a process that I started doing with my food to redevelop my physical structure and my health back. As I
Perfect.
started influencing everything that was going into my body
That's the
to
way to do it.
benefit it, to allow it to build mass, muscle, and to regenerate the cellular structure of myself so that I could sustain on this particular plane of existence for a while longer.
Right. Now that you mentioned food, it's been a long time since I've eaten food from the sun. I don't need to eat the food made by the sun because potential is it's corrupted by the light carried, interference signals. By the time it gets to the plant to be grown, who knows what's in it. Now, my food I eat is what I define core origins food, where it's a different copy. It's been grown exactly in the core of the dark illumination. Dark food is what I eat, is my copy food. I don't eat food from the sun because whose copy sun am I going to be eating food from? You see potential of a corruption there. So in the core origins, there is no necessity of lights, the sun and the moon, as described in the Bible near the end. And the kingdom of God, there's no necessity of lights or blah blah blah, the sun and the moon. It states something like that. For the kingdom of God is illuminated by the glory of God. Yes, because nothing could be corrupted then when the molecules have the luminary core origin source translating, generating, projecting, and creating whatever exists there, the molecule construct of food, structures, etc., etc. So in actual fact, when we return to core origins, there's no lights. Everything's just illuminated like the lights are on because the digital data translator is not an external source perceived light that has the potential to be hijacked or corrupted. So
Well, we
everything's
can't
illuminated.
lose sight of the fact that the sun emanates a type of radiant heat, radiation. Um,
Yes.
and when it goes through its long count cycles, which it goes through 4 different stages in a single cycle, that variable of radiation changes.
Yes. And
And
also
thus,
influence by technologies too, influenced by the time it gets here.
yes,
Or by
yeah,
the
and
time
that's why such
by the
things as
time
a
go ahead, go
CME
ahead.
has effects on electromagnetics in our technology. You know, a
Right.
CME could shut all the technology on this planet down very quickly, and it will penetrate structure.
Yeah, that's what I defined. I don't eat like a food from the sun because by the time it arrives here, perceived the digital data decoded in the thought core, it's been manipulated by another frequency code. Okay, so that's why I define as I don't perceive any lights in my system where I exist, my copy, because yes, I'm still here at this region where I need to turn on a light switch to get the decoding. But I know when I turn on the light switch, it's my mind decoding all the information, not the light above my head. Even that light above my head is actually not a light. It's just luminary decoding. It's decoded in the core origin. Source is decoding it. I don't rely on something or someone else to decode it because then potential, it's not the core origin's code. It's been manipulated for control purposes to send a program virus in my thought core where everything is perceived happening. So it is interesting. It gets really
Well, thus
interesting.
sun cancer or intense ultraviolet and radiation on plants that burn them now, and they tried to blame it on everything from the ozone to a decaying
Yes.
atmosphere. And all it is a particular transition of houses and cycles of the sun. We are under a great transition in this particular state of existence, the third
Yes.
dimensional plane.
And I'm glad you brought up the sunburn. Now, I represent this to everybody here. Is if we were in frequency resonance with the sun, it would not burn us. We would just feel it, enjoy it. We could stay in the sun for 50 hours and not get burned because we're the same frequency perceived, also same code format programming. But the reason people burn is because they're not the same frequency. That's why I define the sun up there is quite one of the main manipulations next to the lights being constructed down here, perceived a different region in the thought core is the sun, the lights, etc.
Okay, I'm
So,
going to go a little sideways on you here,
sure.
and this is going to be from a strange angle. When you go into a cave and you look at the life in there, it has no pigment, has no melanin, generally albino. Um,
Yes.
those humans that are born without melanin are either of a genetic strain from somewhere that doesn't exist under the radioactive type of light that creates melanin to be a protective barrier in the skin, or they were developed in complete darkness. Thus, the albino human to the ones that have no melanin or sun resistance in their skin.
I get you. Now let's take it to another level. The sun, if we perceive it is not up there, it's actually projection in a thought core. So what is the sun doing then? It's giving light codes transfer of data. So in actual fact, maybe they were designed to be in the caves. That's their lot. But our design is here. to realize the manipulations and not be engineered by false lights perceived, anti-light. So
Well, here's an interesting. Go ahead. Go ahead.
what you're
I'm
defining
sorry.
about it programming the melanin, yes, but realizing the programming is happening in our thought core where the projection is actually taking place.
I would agree with that, except that the general state of the mass majority of our species has melanin, black hair, and brown eyes. The anomaly and the minority are the people without melanin and have a diverse colored hair and eye.
So you're saying the colored eyes, different color eyes are something lacking in
Different color
melanin?
eyes, different color hair, no melanin. We are a separate genetic strain.
So I wasn't aware of that. So yeah, I agree with you. That variable's there. Of course it's there.
Yes, it is. And it
So
is very relevant. We have been usurped by a genetic anomaly, whereas the natural people that can retain a resonance with the sun and this earth have melanin, black hair, and brown eyes, which is the majority of the planet, if it's a planet.
but once again, as we're returning to the core origins, we can structure the programming, the engineering of, colored eyes, not colored eyes, vice versa. Colored eyes may end up having melanin, etc., more than the non-colored eyes. Vice versa. I'm just representing variables here. The probabilities of possibilities is there's no limits.
Well, the evidence, Singh, is that if you take a person of pale skin and diverse hair and eyes, the sun will fry them. Whereas
I get
those
fried.
that have melanin, huh?
I said I get fried in the sun easily.
I turn red. Um,
I tan quite well, but in the past, the sun was different. I will define this. The sun isn't what it used to be. I can't really do what I used to do in the sun with my skin. And I can feel sometimes that after 5 minutes, six, the sun is cooking me. It's not what it used to be. I used to be able to stay in the
right.
sun after getting some color for hours, hours and hours, and I wouldn't feel it. But now, even after getting color, some base coat tanning, I can't do the same. It's just like I know the limit out there is probably 15, 20 minutes on one side. The first day I'll get cooked doing that. First day, 5 minutes, I know that already. That's a lot on each side as I go for my walk. Now, when I get to maximum perceived, I get color and stuff. Still 20 minutes, half hour max. It's not the same as it used to be. So what
Um,
I
has
get cooked like
changed?
no one's business.
So what I'm questioning here, what has changed? Has the sun changed or have we
well,
changed
yeah.
frequency
No, no,
resonance
no.
where
The
the
sun's
sun
in a transitional cycle. Like I said, the sun goes through 4 cycles. They're long counts. And they complete a yuga cycle. Uh, Generally, it's defined by 36,000 years. The sun will go through its full 4 cycles. And upon this, the variables of its projected radiation and intensity changes, and its spectrum also changes. But those that have the darker hair, the brown eyes, and the sun-resistant skin are able to withstand, and they're able to adapt with the changes of these cycles in the sun. Whereas those of us that have the that, which is from my mom, the Scandinavian, introduced to them, uh, aren't able to do that. They become subject to the abuse of radiation and intense frequency that the sun gives off, especially when it changes station or goes through one of its precessions or yuga cycles. That's a part of the clock.
right. So I always question access. Are these the cycles they want us to follow? You see what I'm
Well, it was
saying?
put in place as And I've been doing quite fine going new moon to new moon, watching the precession of the stars for different variable energies, and paying attention to the long count of the sun changing houses and station. And so far, everything has lined up to make absolute coherent sense.
Okay.
Just the environmental effect. It doesn't change the fact that you can re-resonate, tune, or restructure yourself to be beyond the or underneath of the influences of these heavenly bodies. People do it every day. They adjust
Right.
themselves to it.
You could use
The
the energy.
24-hour
Yeah, use
or
fine
7-day
tune.
week or Gregorian calendar. Yeah,
Tune.
their attitude with the Gregorian calendar and trying to pay attention to the 7-day week with different names to set a schedule and a derivative of 5 days of work, 2 days of rest, or
Yes.
the Sabbath if you're spiritual. Um, there is a 7-day process that is within the lunar cycle, but new moon to new moon is the completion of a full month, a Schumann month or a luminary month. And the stars have a precession that repeats, and they repeat over a long count uh, with the sun, except for the solstice and the equinoxes. Um, the sun, though, is the full variable. It is obviously the one that dominates the changing of position and station of influence by wavelengths on us in an intense way. It generally changes world events. Um, Sometimes it brings about extreme changes in environmental situations, cataclysms, volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis. And these effects are something that we have to kind of be aware of for the perpetuation of the species of human. Though I
Right.
would just assume that 90+% of them just be swept out in a tsunami and
So,
that'd be that.
so we can agree the sun has an influence of certain programmings, variables for sure.
Yes, it's a frequency. Yes, absolutely.
Right. And I agree totally. All right, Axis, I need to eat some food and take care of a few other things. I can't promise I'll return. I may return, I may not return. Depends how long it takes me. Do I have a few things to take care of before I can get back here? I sort of put it on delay to come on here, but I don't regret it. It was awesome builds, awesome information we shared, and if it's still
And you're
happening,
always
maybe.
welcome.
All right, thanks. I'll pop on here and check it out if it's still happening. Once again, Pam, thanks. Good to see you again. And if you're still here,
Likewise.
maybe next time we'll cross paths again. And to the people participating in the comments, thank you for joining. If anybody has been commenting to myself, I don't respond because my phone here doesn't give me the option for some reason. The platform on this phone here, when I use YouTube, doesn't give me the option to pull up the comments. If I tried that before, it just didn't work. So I'm not using my tablet to multitask. So if you had comments responding to myself, anything I've been talking about, I haven't been ignoring you. It's just I don't do that multi thing sort of here when I'm on the phone with my tablet. That I like to focus on the conversation. So maybe Axis, if
And I
somebody has an
appreciate that.
interesting comment in next time or something. I don't know if you can draw it up like some other people do. If you find it of interest that you want to bring on here too, we can bring it up and we can build on that too, right? So just to clarify that I'm not a arrogant snob and I'm not responding.
No, Singh, you are absolutely fine. And I have complete confidence that at your discretion, you will come up when you have information and you want to participate and interact. And like I said, you're always a treasured and welcome guest. Thank you.
Excellent. Likewise, everybody participating. So I'll see you maybe later, if not another panel.
Sounds good. Sounds very good. Thank you, Sing. Okay. Well, what do you think, Pam?
Well, I think it's been an interesting discussion. I was going to ask you with the sun and stuff. I've noticed that we're having an abundance of solar flares and things like that. So, wouldn't you say the sun's in a peak cycle right now?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. That's why I said we're going through a state of solar transition. And it is having a massive, massive effect on not only the luminaries and the stations of the planets and the heavenly bodies, but on the human species. Some people are able to adjust and develop, and some people I think are absolutely out of tune so bad that they're disrupted to their environment and to themselves in an incoherent way.
Do
That's a
you think
nice way
any
of
of the
saying they're
do you think
crazy.
any of the do you think any of the sun stuff is affecting the blinking light phenomenon?
I'm not sure whether that's a sun phenomena or not. Generally, because what I've interpreted and watching these lights, it seems that they're receiving a direct uh, wavelength that is disrupting the flow of electricity in almost the way of binary Morse code or on, off information transmission. Now, whether that's coming from the sun as an interpretable information that we're receiving and it's affecting the flow of electricity and electromagnetic field, I couldn't say where it's coming from, but it is interpretable.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering if there was some kind of effect on the electromagnetic field, if the sun was having anything to do with that, because there's some strange happenings going on with like sky phenomena and things like that. And there's been increased weather activity in places that's getting weather that they don't typically get. And I pay attention to those type of things. It's something that's a lot of people don't pay attention to, but I pay attention kind of all over the place. I've always had an interest in the weather and things.
And you're right, it has amped up. I mean, everything from ocean activity is amped up, sky phenomena has absolutely, and I don't know whether that's because the spectrum of the sun and transition is changing, revealing uh, more of what's actually there to be interpreted, but also the volcanoes are being affected, land masses are being affected. I don't know if it has anything to do with the fires or not. It potentially could, but I know that the visual interpretation that I generally get, which was within a certain spectrum, is now much broader. It's almost as if I can see in a little bit different frequency. Changed. It changed a little bit.
Hmm.
Not so much as to be able to see like spirits or wavelength energy. It just changed the hue of my environment.
Yeah, I've
You're out there in
definitely.
Phoenix. You would see
Yeah,
that more so than I would, especially at your
everything
elevation. I'm
everything
sorry,
here's
Pam.
been pretty normal though. I mean, as far as seasonal, like we got some rain here, which was rare, but I mean, there's rare things going on everywhere, like insane monsoon dust storms in the panhandle of Texas. And yeah, they get like dust, but they don't get like 75 car pile up and like, all
Right.
kinds of crazy things going on. And then you have like Houston got a bunch of snow this year and I'm a weather person, so I pay attention.
Well, I remember I just left out of um, Texarkana the day before that first was almost what 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Ice storm come in and was just devastated Texas with a coat of ice that they had never seen before. And the Gulf of America um, actually seen snow this year on the beaches. And I
Exactly.
thought, these are some pretty heavy phenomena. And ever since that ice storm, which I was very fortunate that I left out the day before that happened, I'd have been dead. Uh, I thought, man, this is intense because they had never seen such a thing. They shut the power grid down there in Texas and fucking just a layer of buried ice. And then I was watching video from them showing snow on the beaches. And they shut 10 down, which 10 is the main highway from Texas to Florida. It has
Hmm.
Tallahassee and Pensacola and takes you straight into, the
Yep.
peninsula. And yeah, it was completely shut down because of fucking snow. I was like,
That's
damn,
crazy.
yeah, right. And I'm like,
I used
okay,
to live in West
the
Florida. I can't even imagine how they reacted.
well, they were I they some of them were out there playing in it. I mean, 10 was completely shut down, and these people were left without snow shovels, without Arctic gear. I mean, fuck, it's the Gulf. Yeah, West Florida. I mean, you don't think of a snow shovel or snow plow or having a ski suit or anything like that because it just doesn't get that way down there. It gets a little cold in the winters, and sometimes the peninsula will have ice on it, but generally the Gulf is pretty well white sands. I mean, you get that warmer current coming in,
Hmm.
and I figured that was a lot to do with the oceanic phenomena that's been going on. Lots of bizarre, strange oceanic phenomena, and so I'm watching the environment, the actual surface of the planet being affected by this transition of the mode of the sun. And it's going into what would be considered the final or the fourth stage of its precession.
Interesting. I saw yesterday there were 75 active volcanoes.
Yes, yeah. And the, the solar CMEs that have been coming off of the sun have just been absolutely massive. Sunspots, uh, dead regions, overactive regions, and then you have the planetary pool of all the major bodies being on one side of the sun. And I'm sure that that has
Mhm.
a gravitational effect on for whatever gravitational pull is, equilibrium pull on the Earth. So I imagine that has a massive effect too, which hasn't been a thing since 2000, well, over 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, might go back to what we were talking about earlier and being reformatted again. With the way humanity's going, you never know.
Well, it would seem that by the heavenly architectural clock, that which was put into place to tell times, signs, and seasons, is in the exact same position as when there was a great change within the Earth's environment, and it wasn't to man's benefit. as far as being able to sustain. So whether it happens or not, I'm not going to make a prophecy or prediction on it. But I will
Yeah.
say, if you go into there's this website where you can go and check the planetary positions against uh, coherent or the same planetary positions, and how many thousands of years ago it was that those particular positions were in place. And it's just, that's why they've always been able to stay up on us, and they understood what energies we were about to be under and the influences. And if there's going to be great cataclysmic change, then I'm sure that they're quite aware of it just by knowing the movement of these bodies and the effects that it has on the earth, because obviously something is affecting us.
Makes you wonder if the effects on the earth is kind of, and of course the answer is yes, it's kind of impacted people too, because I've also noticed with psychology and human behavior that it's off the chain more so than, say, 10 years ago.
Yeah, I can definitely tell a difference, and especially from back in the 70s and 80s, it's like night and day. There is no comparison environmentally. The worst we had was Mount St. Helens in the 80s, and that was a singular volcano, and that was a big to-do. But now it's like every other week or every other day, there's a devastating fire, a volcano eruption, a tsunami, an earthquake, and it's just amping itself at a more rapid pace.
Yeah, there's always something. I know the fire thing is a big thing, that there's fires in places that there normally isn't fires. I heard something on TikTok that basically said that there was an insurance adjuster who basically was a data analyst or whatever, and they say that supposedly there's areas in north, like in the Phoenix area, that might be next for all of that, without getting into details.
I know that they, man, they in the far south, from southern Arizona all the way to Florida, has been experiencing drastic changes until it's stabilized a little more here recently, but now it seems to have moved towards the mid part of the state. There was a lot of turbulence that hit north of us and south of us. Now apparently we're in the active zone now.
Interesting. And I was going to ask you before I forget, you and Singh were talking about so many things, and sometimes it's hard to get a word in edgewise, but I wanted to ask you, we were talking about the nature of darkness and light and all of that. And well, with the background of being Pentecostal and Southern Baptist, you know how they vilify the darkness and things. Do you think it's their vilification of darkness that is responsible for all the scandals within those churches? And I'll go ahead and include other churches too that have a lot of scandals in that.
Well, yeah. If you do not allow the potential for darkness, darkness is where something can be manifested. It can be imagined and brought into the visual state, or the material realm, or this dimension. First, it has to be a thought form. Thought forms are developed not in the light, but in the dark. That is
Creation's done in the
something.
void.
Yes, exactly. And then out of that becomes coherent physical manifestation, what we consider to be tangible physical environment or reality. But that is created from a place that has yet to be brought into potential. And if the church was to actually allow that type of thinking, then people would be able to do as the early Gnostic Christians did and engineer their own understanding through the basic principles of geometry and thought form. And therefore, as long as you have them under the control of indoctrination and that abstract thinking or being in those places where you can develop thought forms is wrong, then they're going to stay silent and submissive. They're not going to be able to develop their own understanding, and they're not going to be able to structure the mind to work for its own creation of reality.
Interesting.
But yeah,
I've been studying the Amish religion, and I've noticed that when a lot of them go turn 18 and they get away or whatever, they tend to go buck wild. And I think it's because they've been over sheltered or over like too much in a pure environment. And so when they get the chance, they go like the other side of the pendulum.
well, I'll tell you that's what happened to me, Pam, and I'll be
Really?
100% yes. If you really want to know where my hedonism and overexuberance for what they consider sin or um, whatever they want to call it, behavior, is I was brought up under the Southern Baptists that had me convinced that the devil was waiting around every corner and God was
Right?
watching my every move.
Mhm.
And they frightened me into submission. And after I had my head trauma, it was like a light turned on. And I was like, hold on, this is no way to try and experience life. And if that's God, I don't want nothing to do with him. And as far as the devil goes, well, those fruits are a lot fucking nicer than having the church and all the congregation and my family ripping down my throat, burning my shit, throwing it away, and trying to take my abstract thinking from me. And I completely resented them. I hated Christians oh my God. If they spoke of Jesus or Christianity or church, fuck you. I'm not interested. And I went on
Understandable.
a complete rebellious station where sex, drugs, rock and roll, hedonism, overindulgence, alcohol, it didn't fucking matter, man. I was going to overindulge to the point where it became hedonistic. And that lasted for a long time. But in the process of this, I did realize that there was a type of spirituality to me, whether I liked it or not, which caused me to endeavor into, Hinduism, Satanism, various denominations, even esoteric societies, looking for that type of fulfillment, something to fill that void of spirituality in me that was just basically a materialistic overindulgence without substance. And in the pursuit of that is whenever I started looking into all these different philosophies and doctrines. But I was also at the same time, feeding a career and feed my own indulgences until things started to click after I started seeing a consistency. And there was an absolute consistency. And I was like, okay, you know, they all have something to offer. They all have something of potential value, but they also all have a less than desirable side, such as, you know, the Catholic Church or the Southern Baptist. And it's all about administering a type of spiritual control. And I thought, well, the only way to get away from that is not to participate. And in that non-participation, if I look for some type of substance to my spirituality, it should manifest itself. And it did. And at that point, I realized that the truth is an equation that has a coherent derivative. And then everything makes sense. Geometry, proportion, structure, as opposed to chaos. Darkness being the development of thought form, imagination, and potential, as opposed to looking at the mathematics of perceived visual reality. That was my journey. I'm sorry, Pam. I went on a tangent there.
No, that was interesting. I've heard bits and pieces of your story, but I didn't hear about how I didn't realize how indoctrinated you also were into Southern Baptist. I indoctrinated myself by choice because church was the escape from a really shitty home, and so every time that church was open, I was there. I was teaching Bible school and everything.
No, I was brought up in a very indoctrinated Southern Baptist bunch of fucks. They went out in the spirit. They believed in demons, demon possession. They would lay hands on each other at church. They'd go out in the spirit. They'd talk in tongues.
Oh, that's a different kind of Southern Baptist than I was around.
Yeah.
You sound like you got the bad ones.
They were worse than bad. They were vindictively hateful with their system of control and indoctrination.
Same with mine.
To the point where I detested just the thought of God, Jesus, and Satan. I wanted nothing to do with any of them. I had been browbeat and just basically subdued and shackled for years by these monsters. And to me, that was one of the worst forms of mental abuse that, you know, outside of a sexual nature that one could go through. You know, you were afraid to do anything because you were going to go to hell or God was watching to judge you. And if they weren't, the family was, and the church was, and the pastor was there every fucking Sunday to remind you, you're going to hell. The devil's
And if
watching.
it wasn't one of the pastors, it was one of his henchmen known as deacons or Sunday school teachers.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, that's why the head trauma to me was, it was a savant thing because the complex things became simple and simple things became entirely complex and unbearable. But my perception of what was going on and what was happening to me became very evident. These people are fucking insane monsters seeking control and submission by the use of good and evil or God and the devil. And they were middle management. Fuck you. That's what created the hedonistic monster that is Axis Rattblood.
Well, I think monster is a harsh term.
Well, that's what they consider me. My family.
Well, the church called me demon possessed when I started talking about what some of their members, how they were behaving. So, that's a common trope.
right? And unless you've been through that a religious abuse, uh, people won't know the root of the disdain that can be developed for those people. And to watch them all try and contend with each other to be the right or the truth. Well, I don't see any of you actually bringing anything to the table worthwhile except more control, confusion, and indoctrination. Not interested, man. Not interested. So I figured self-structuring, being relevant to understanding that a structured state of mind relevant to the constant as opposed to a chaotic state of mind that is within the confines of religion or the persistent was much more stable and much more self-revealing and evident. And thus began my structured understanding of quantum mechanics, mathematics, proportion design, even my interpretation of different variables within all these religions and philosophies and schools of teaching, that which was utilized and was useful to me. And if it wasn't, then I had no use for it. Changing the structure of things through prayer. I can understand that now, but that is a state that you have to project into the molecular structure of whatever you're praying over. And it has nothing to do with the intent of an indoctrinated church. But the more people that believe, the stronger the illusion. Why I said to Freak is, when I was in the institution, there were people in there that were totally engulfed in what they believed in, which was not coherent to me. And I could see how the transition between that to people that were walking around in general society just as fucking indoctrinated with an illusion or a lie or a system of beliefs that were just as incoherent for functionality as people I was locked up with in the institution.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's not going anywhere. That's just what they define as insanity. You're just repeating the same thing over and over and over, but you're not getting any visible results.
I see a lot of the same dynamics as classic like psychology textbook abuse going on in the church, like the abusive relationships, except it's with the congregation.
Yeah, and it's set up to perpetuate the congregation or the indoctrinated church, whatever denomination it may be, that they kind of scare the youth into hooking up with the same denomination within the church. It's a meat market to perpetuate the church, the indoctrination. Thus, the polygamy of the Mormons. It was said to build the body of the church for what
The
that
Amish
is.
gun people for going outside of the religion.
Yeah, they want to bring people in to build a diverse gene pool within that denomination, or otherwise they're going to wind up like various other denominations and a lot of inbreeding and a shallow genetic pool. So you want fresh meat all the time in your meat market to perpetuate your system of control through religion, thus God and the devil. Yeah, strict Greek Orthodox, or even a Hasidic or Orthodox Jew or a devout Muslim. It's so deep seated. I'm referring to Fools and Fools comment there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they promote the ideal of, and it's kind of a twisted way, but they want you to hook up with somebody from the same denomination at the youngest age possible to perpetuate the body of the church. And they talk a lot about relationships. They have church activities to promote interaction amongst the males and the females as to inspire relationships. There was a lot of that going on within the Southern Baptist churches that I was subjected to as a youth.
Yeah, same here.
And I don't know, I just had a different understanding of entertainment. And it had nothing to do with the fucking church or what they were trying to subject me to. I wasn't interested in that. I had too many diverse and abstract thoughts. So they said that I was catering to the devil. And I said, okay, I guess I'm going to cater to the devil, man. For what it's worth.
That's interesting. I was like I said, I'd heard little bits and pieces here and there. I know for me, I'm thankful that it was a stepping stone when I was younger. But as I got older and the more I woke up, I definitely started to see it as a stumbling block.
Yeah, it is. And my entire family put me in a state of ostracized because of my resistance to the traditional family Southern Baptist ideal. My cousins were warned that I served the devil and not to listen to me, or they even at family functions, were hesitant to let my cousins and have much interaction with me. They were concerned that I was going to influence them away from God or Jesus.
That's crazy because like Jesus hung out with the sinners in the Bible. If you believe
Yeah, well,
that book, if Jesus was about everybody.
yeah, well, Jesus isn't about everybody. He's only about the Southern Baptist, to the Southern Baptist.
Yeah, I get it. That's what I heard too. And everyone else was just going to hell. They were gonna just rot.
Straight up. Yep. They're all going to hell. They don't stand a chance. They're heathens. They're blasphemers. They're adulterers. They're idolaters. And they're all going to hell. Except the preacher and whoever can walk that fine line that is approved by the church, the Southern Baptist Church.
Well, it's whoever donates the most, don't you know? It's the same with all churches.
Yes, I do. And that's one of the things that I noticed that is consecutive. Uh, Amongst the Mormons, you're in good standing whenever you're tithing and you're a card carrying Mormon in good standing with the church is adequate for their goals or the suggested good standing favor. That's the same with, donating
Scientology.
all of them. Even, the Masonic order. If you don't pay your dues, then you're not in good standing. And to be a card carrying active Mason, your dues have to be paid up.
Yeah, I was going to tell you.
Anything.
I was going to tell you about the Masonic stuff. You know how earlier you were talking about you and Singh and people were. I guess it was you and Singh were talking about the Masonic order and how people kind of idolize that. I've never was never impressed by it. Like any of those mystery schools never had any, or like any of those Masonic orders or anything like that. I don't know, for whatever reason, it never had an appeal to me, because I always feel like all of that information's like within inside us. And I feel like they try to do everything to distract us from that, hence God, the devil, or Jesus, the devil, and all of that. But I've never resonated with I've never like studied the whole Mason stuff and all of that, like some people do.
I was lucky enough to be in a micro cosm of Mason. The little town that I grew up in had the Masonic, as you're coming in, it had an Eastern Star temple. And then there was a Masonic temple. And I started noticing whose cars were parked out there on certain nights. I started noticing that the town council members were all affiliated. Most of the school board were affiliated. They were either Eastern Stars or they were Masons. And then I started noticing that local law enforcement was also involved in this. And I was coherent enough to know that they all went to the same fucking place. Either it was the Eastern Star Temple or the Masonic Temple. And therefore, to my notion, early conspiratorial minded, they were up to no good. They were the structure that was beneath the little town that I grew up in. They were the influential individuals of that little town, the ones to look up to, the ones to try and be like, or the Joneses, And I was completely resistant to that. I wanted to smoke a joint, get drunk, climb the hills, dirty, fuck, live in an old, Victorian farmhouse in a little town. I had no interest in structure, or more or less living up to the fucking Joneses. But you could tell whose kids were the kids of these particular people in school. And they stuck together. And if you weren't a part of them, then you were completely ostracized and outcast by them. They didn't want anything to do with you. You were less than. Even the teachers would not respond to you the same as the kids of these particular people in this town. So I had a very intimate look at these son of a bitches and their influence.
It was a very us versus them mentality, huh?
Yeah, very, very much so. If you didn't meet the quota of what they expected you to be socially, as far as conformity and participation, then you were just basically a piece of shit. And they wanted nothing to do with you, and they didn't want their kids around you. I had to deal with a lot of rejection for my chosen station, which was nonconformity. Just wasn't interested.
Understandable.
You know, I didn't care who was on the school board. I didn't care who was on the town council. I didn't care who was on the basketball team. I didn't care who participated into this, that, or another, and who was going to be uh, prom king or prom queen, or who as far as the way they were dressed or what their curriculum was. School was an inconvenience to me anyhow. It just got in my fucking way. It stopped me from enjoying my life and having fun. So I resented it from the beginning. And the people that ran that town were all a bunch of stiff-colored assholes. And that completely went against my pot-smoking, alcohol-consuming heathen ass.
Right? I could see that.
And I couldn't go home and experience any type of safety or comfort because they were all fucking Southern Baptists. So I had to individualize, refortify my sense of self-perseverance, and develop a individual and self-dialized approach to things.
Yeah, but I bet you're
mode
more
is
of a
one of them.
self-actualized person than a lot of people around you.
Yeah, I would say that reflects in my music, my art, especially some of my earlier stuff that I done with paintings, drawings, sculptures, even my miniatures now. I set my boards back up, got my house in order, even started producing artwork again. And like I said, I'm creating music again. And the more that I'm comfortable in my seclusion, because I'm not being judged, I'm not being persecuted, I'm not being ostracized or outcast, I am in an environment where I can fully express me and experience what I fundamentally tried to in the beginning, was just enjoy my art, my life, even my endeavors into alcohol or whatever, I ingest. It's an experience. And I try and use it to enhance my experience, not escape life, but to enhance the experience. Sometimes I'll get really fucked up and look at a blank canvas. And I got my first canvas done today, and actually got it hung in the studio. And
That's
I've got another
awesome.
canvas. Yeah, I got another canvas that I just coated and primed for another piece of artwork. And I set my miniature table back up, which is the pantheon of the gods overlooking the pit of hell and the caverns of hell. And I did it all in miniature, using Dungeons and Dragons miniatures, and I sculpted and designed my own walls and the caverns, and designed the actual arena of hell with Satan, a dragon, and conflict. I finally got that all put back together.
Wow,
I let
you're
it go.
you're quite the creative one. I didn't realize you had that much of an artistic side to you. I noticed Maggot was saying he's an artist also in the chat. That's so cool that you have so many creatives around you.
Yeah, I mean, I've got, my drum set, got my keyboards, Got my main instrument, which is guitar and a microphone. Got a sound studio. Also, my digital interactive art, which is art and music, and a personification of my personality as an entertainer. And yeah, everything. I mean, to me, it's all an expressive ideal, and it can be developed with a little bit of discipline. Just learn musical skills, learn your different brushes, different techniques. Um, start experimenting with projecting images out of your mind onto canvas or paper or even doodles. It's like strumming one string on a guitar until finally you can play all six of them efficiently. You got to start somewhere. And with that endeavor, just proceed forward with all imagination and all potential and possibility. And hone those skills and don't surrender them to anybody. Have full creative right. Because once that's taken from you, you will feel that sting.
Agreed.
My my fifth grade teacher, her name was Miss Saturn, and I remember her saying, because I did all the artwork for the fifth grade play, which was The Wizard of Oz, I did the stage work, and she said, it's such a shame to see someone with that talent that has no future. And my music
Yikes.
teacher said the same fucking thing to me. She was an Eastern Star, and he was a conservative conformist. And I outshined both of them and was able to go back later on in my life and show them, haha, bitches, I succeeded without you and your conformity, which is my contempt with the Masonic order, religions as structured religions or, denomination. I've not had good experiences with either of them. Nor family
Makes sense,
structure.
though.
I'm sorry?
I said makes sense though. It like you explaining that, to kind of understand more where you're coming from. You were kind of the black sheep too, huh? In your family.
Oh my God, yeah.
Well, that's my
Yeah,
middle
one of the
name, so
blackest.
I think that's why we get one of the reasons we get along.
Right? We, we were both victims of Christianity.
Religious trauma
But
syndrome.
right now, I'm so versed and educated in their scripture that try me. Really, bring on your best, and I will tear those verses apart. I will rip the history down. Whatever I need to do to show you some relevancy that you're not seeing the full picture. You're not understanding the depth of the analogy. You're just looking at the superficial aspects of what you're not even actually doing. You're just lip service to a bunch of words that you don't even fucking understand. You're just devoted to the concept that you've been instructed to be devoted to. Therefore, you're not even living. You're not even alive. You are just a automaton to someone else's ideal. Me,
I
I
agree.
developed that. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sam. I'm
I was just
sorry.
going to say, I agree. I've always taken issue with the whole concept of how some people need a book to be like a holy and good person.
Yeah, it's like when I was born, I did not have an instruction manual stuck up my ass. And as I was brought up in the hills and the Appalachians and around nature, I understood uh, dogs. I understood deer, fish, uh, snakes, turtles, uh, my environment, and how to be able to get along in it because hell, I was subjected to it. That's where I spent all my fucking time. That's why I had to get over spiders and reptiles and all that shit because fuck, man, you can't be scared of it because you're around it. You're enveloped in it, and it also, is part of my financial stability as a younger individual. But even then, I was still, they were trying to direct and engineer me into being a benefit to their formula. Maybe if we get him up here and he's in the wilderness with us and he's cutting wood and we get him some self-esteem and give him a sense of purpose, he'll develop into an upstanding type of roofer or tradesman. Nah, that didn't work either. I was using that fucking money to get high and drunk.
Right? It's funny. They tried. You can't say they didn't try.
Yep. Yeah, I remember the last day that I worked for the Stark, which was Emil Stark, and he was the one that was taking me out, trying to turn me into a upstanding young man. And I walked up to go to work, and my eyes were glossy as fuck. And he says, I'm not going to have a drug addict in my environment and working for me, so you can go on home. And I thought, you judgmental motherfucker. I wasn't even high at the time, uh, wasn't stoned because I didn't go to work stoned. Hell, we had chainsaws and was pulling 18-inch cords of hunks of wood to
Mhm.
load in the back of the truck for a rig and or a cord of wood. So I didn't go there stoned or drunk. I knew better. It felt like shit by afternoon. You didn't even want
You
to work
can't do work
anymore.
like
So
that with being like drunk and high.
no, but apparently I had glazed eyes, and he had figured out that my extracurricular activity was overindulgent, and he just, I guess that's the day he gave up on me. Which was okay. His son went on to be uh, military and made a career and a life out of the military. And he became a good, submissive, and respectable person. I, on the
Well,
other hand,
there you
went
go.
to the
The realm needs those
yeah,
too.
yep. So, and that was my best friend growing up. Emil Stark, his son. They were German immigrants, and you know, his son just followed the military path, and his daughter was a sports uh, champion of the school for track and field, so she had her station, and I was the rebellious, outcast, drug addict, Satanist in the town, and was treated very well accordingly. But that was accepted behavior when I got in the city. When I finally made it to the city and I could play guitar, I could drink, I could smoke, I could do whatever with the best of them. And hell, I fit right in, you know. And I was able to maneuver in that environment very effectively. Whereas, had I not developed those skills, I would probably have been overlooked or just completely rejected by the music industry and the entertainment industry. So they actually perpetuated a performer.
Yeah, being around those worldly people did you some good, huh?
Fuck yeah, man! It taught me not to be like them and to avoid them at all
Right?
costs.
It's
You know,
understandable.
and I will say that I did overindulge to the point where my ability to consume alcohol and do drugs uh, exceeded my peer group. So they kind of looked at me as the excessive, the one who took it to extremes, who knew no limits, and a couple people trying to follow that particular lifestyle didn't make it. And I suppose in a proxy way that might have, I don't know, maybe reflected on my son. You know, he had a lot to live up to. You know, I left quite the legacy and history behind me. Just a thought that I sometimes entertain, think maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
Just
but we're
there was
all here
certain,
on our own paths.
yeah, and he was a grown man, 29 years old. If you ain't got your shit figured out by 29, then,
I mean, I had the
you
most rotten, vile parents you can think of, and I've taken a benevolent path in life. So it all depends on choices and who you are, and as a person, parents and upbringing. It doesn't matter so much.
right, which is what I was trying to express in showing the little video of my mother, is she was so demeaning
I saw
to
that.
anyone's
I don't
character.
comment on it. I saw that, but I don't comment on it because what do you say to that, right? But like I saw the video you're speaking of.
Yeah, and me being completely defiant of not only her religion, but pursuing a career in entertainment. I was the fucking incarnation of the devil himself and the biggest fucking loser that could walk the face of the earth. And she reminded me of that every fucking day. You're a piece of
Mhm.
shit, devil worshiping, drug addict, loser, and you think you're going to be something in music or this, that, or another. Well, yeah, I do. And guess what, bitch? I accomplished it. And you resented it to this day. And she still does. Which is why I think she takes the extreme, approach to trying to, I don't know, by proxy, my children, um, tries to denigrate me by posing herself as an example of how people should be and what I am. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to buy into that shit either.
Definitely seems like some triangulation going on for sure.
Yeah, and it's just me observing. I understand that these are supposed to be grown adults. And I'm like, these are fucking children. These are these are fucking children with money and directive, and people
Well,
listen to
that's
them.
society, though. That's most of society around us is just like children with grown up bank accounts. They're still using the
right?
same programming that they came into this realm with.
I, I just, Pam, I enjoyed having money, and I do enjoy having money.
Well, yeah,
But
money's
that's not
awesome.
my status. That's not my talent is my status. My ability to produce music or create art or any type of medium that I work with. That is the value of me, not my possessions or my money. And I never could get my mom to understand that, or my son. Oh, I just really, you know, uh, there was no substance in someone who could buy love. And I've seen it happen not only with the church, but I've seen it happen socially. And I just found disdain for it.
Yeah, overimportance on money, then relationships are transactional. No, thank you.
That seems to be it seems to be the motivation of most people in the church, out of the church, socially. Uh, I would like to see, or I did. I did see. I surrounded myself with artistic people, musicians, um, people who thought abstractly, even sexually abstractly. When I owned a dungeon, I mean, talk about some abstract motherfuckers. They were
Right?
abstract, but to me, that was physical, uh, a type of physical art. The leather, the machines, the interaction. It wasn't just some chaotic club where people went in there and just started randomly doing shit. No, they each had a defined art to what they done. And I could appreciate that. And if they didn't, well, they generally didn't stick around the club long because nobody wanted to fuck with them. Nobody wanted to interact with them. And that's a definite a praise to Sparks on Main Street, Louisville, and my club, which was the sister club to it, Underground, the Dungeon, associated with the Paddle in New York, and the Pleasure Chest in Chicago, and Aftermath in Chicago, and all the wonderful times and experiences that went with it, man. Good times, good experiences. And the Leather Rose in Chicago, I don't want to forget that either. Hans, for all the years of enduring bullshit from Chicago Police Department.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, and always a warm gratification to Uncle Al for cutting the way on Clark and Belmont in Chicago and developing not only the Thrill Kill Cult, but Ministry, the Revolting Cocks, and his first endeavors, which weren't fruitful, to his drug abuse that spawned the first full-blown industrial album, The Land of Rape and Honey, which set off a wax tracks phenomena that allowed me to leave the heavy metal industry and go directly into the industrial Rust Belt scene. And to my handler and manager, Eddie Clay, always the best, because he probably kept me out of more jails and bad press than anybody. So I still wound up getting stupid here and there. It Pam, it's been a wild ride. It really has.
Sounds
And
like it.
thank you for letting me share that with you.
No problem. Thank you for sharing. I know you had an extensive history, but I didn't realize how long you've been in the entertainment industry and how long back it goes.
Yeah, it was the only way I could find sanctity in all the horrible people that I was around, and that's religion and what would be considered influential society, and that was my sanctuary. That was my church.
Makes sense.
When I was on stage or I was performing, and all these people were in the same energy, and we were sharing the experience. And I remember the creation of the music and the writing of the songs, and to see other people celebrating that moment and sharing in that energy was it was a religious experience. I mean, it's a very spiritual experience. I won't say religion, but it was a spiritual experience. That to
Well,
me
yeah, I'd
was
rather have a
fellowship.
spiritual experience over a religious one.
Yeah, and sometimes, when I was on that stage performing, there was just an overwhelming sense of accomplishment, satisfaction. And even when I started pursuing other endeavors, it was a sense of accomplishment, a sense of satisfaction, a sense of, I fulfilled a desired state, a dream, and brought it to life. And that to me was more fulfilling than any type of indoctrinated religion that they could shove down my throat, or spiritual experience in a fucking church, more or less trying to keep up with the Joneses. And I have
Yeah,
my own
I
dress code.
can relate to that.
I've still got all my leather stage clothes. I still have all my jumpsuits, all my boots. I managed to keep all my stage clothes, and I still, to this day, I have no problem wearing that. I prefer that over sweats and a t-shirt.
Right?
So when I tell you that, I was a self-developed and individualized person, then at least you know where that comes from now.
Well, yeah, and what I was saying is, you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I feel like religious people, they don't get past the bottom tiers of that because their indoctrination doesn't allow them to, or their closed-mindedness, whichever you want to call it.
Well, that's why I am so adamant about removing safety protocol. That's why I even defined it. It is safety protocol that holds you back from experiencing things that could develop your character, could broaden your understanding. But as long as you set those safety protocols up, and the closer you set them up to structured society and religion, you're not even going to comprehend or give a chance to understand anything outside of the scope of that. So I am very adamant about get rid of your safety protocols. Move beyond them, or move them. Eliminate them if you have to.
I was reading the chat. Human or Nude Guru says human society is a disease.
Right? Right? And it inflicts itself on the ones that probably need the most influence. You know, they take the cattle and herd them into churches and positions of social conformity. And to me, that just is completely defeatist of anybody that's endeavoring to develop a higher sense of perspective beyond that of even what would be considered Christ, or even the lesser concept that man tries to apply to God. You know, you can't put God in a book. Okay? To my notion, that is so beyond comprehension that you might be able to put a potential maybe perceived notion into a book, but that's something you have to experience. And as far as promoting an individual into a station that is still human, but the embodiment of the all is just more servitude to me. You know, it's either worship me or go to hell. Worship me
I would
or
agree.
be condemned.
I would agree
I'm
with
sorry,
that.
Pam.
They start teaching children how to think like that though, like when they go to preschool.
Right.
And
And
then
there's
that sets
nothing
the trap.
wrong with personal structuring as long as it's not a sense of control. You know, you can take the platonic solids and you can arrange them into geometric structure to create any type of art you want. Or you can put a harsh limitation on what the potentials of using those platonic solids are, and thus controlling the development of someone's interpretation, understanding, and even ability to think beyond what they've been conditioned and controlled to think. And the sad part is unless they can define the geometry behind it and the potential, they won't know any better. And they will believe that everything that they say and think is to the maximum limit of what can be perceived. And they will try and browbeat the fuck out of you with this indoctrination. If they do it on here, on these social media platforms, it's listen to me and what I say because I am the authority and the final word, or otherwise there's going to be conflict. Well, fuck you. Not buying it.
Yeah, I don't participate in any of that when it gets too culty like that. That's when I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah, and that's what I try and once it starts to get that air in here, or it starts to lean in that direction, That's when I have to grab the reins and pull it tight again and refoundate, thus, lest we forget and become a bunch of bullshit nonsense on another platform that has become defeatist. I'm not going to cater to that. I never have as an individual, nor will I with this platform. You know, I'll play, but only so far.
It's understandable. Well, I do
Like
need to
to give
step
people
down.
a
It's
chance.
been a nice chatting access. I have to get up early tomorrow.
Pam, as usual, it's such a pleasure having you. It's so easy to communicate with you.
Likewise.
You know, and I that is so appreciated. And you will always a welcome guest here. And you
And
always
I
have.
wanted to, before I forget, thank you for that formula with the music. Not what I
Not a
put out
problem.
today, but the future stuff will have that formula. Today's song didn't have it, but the ones moving forward should.
Anytime, Pam. Is
So,
any of any
much
use or
appreciated.
assistance that I can be to your endeavor, to me is innovative. And thank you for allowing me to be able to assist.
No problem. Have a good evening.
You too, Pam. Thank you. All right, the link is out there. If anybody wants to endeavor into the madness that is Access Rattblood, I am available and localized at the moment. Link is in the chat. And instead of hammering myself against your ears and perpetuating a continuing story of overcoming, I'll throw a song out there, links there, and if no one hits it, then I think I'm going to call it a show. All right. I want to thank all my panelists, Sing, Ham, everyone in the chat. I appreciate everyone for being a part of this, for being a participant, for allowing me the opportunity to operate this platform. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. You're much appreciated. And access out. Thank you.